Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Dialogue. I'm Taimur Shamil. Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, would be visiting Pakistan tomorrow. And this would be his first stop, while he would be also visiting other countries in the region. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have a very strong relationship that goes back to several decades. Both countries have been together and therefore each other through thick and thin. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia also have very strong strategic alliances. They are allies. Both have been working on counter-terrorism as well. Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, would also be signing several MOUs inside Pakistan. Saudi Arabia wants to spend and invest in Pakistan, so that what Prime Minister said earlier when he was on his visit to Saudi Arabia, that we want our friends to invest in Pakistan so that Prime Minister can, and Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, they can work on what they promised with the people of Pakistan to bring change that they think that is needed at the grassroots level. While Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, would be visiting Pakistan, recently what happened also in the neighborhood, in Kashmir for that matter, was that Adil Dar was a young man who attacked the Indian troops in Pulwama in Indian-occupied Kashmir, which killed several of the Indian troops. What is going on in Kashmir is no secret. People know that the people of Kashmir, the world knows that the people of Kashmir have been fighting for their right to self-determination for the last 70 years. What happened in Kashmir yesterday was also something that speaks volumes about the Indian atrocities which continue till date, and also the kind of aggression that India has used against the people of Kashmir. The message, we will discuss about it. What is the message of this attack, what has happened in India? But what we saw in India was that this is exactly what BJP wanted. This is exactly what RSS and Shiv Sena wanted. A political mileage that they would get in the coming elections, general elections in India. And anti-Pakistan sentiment prevails inside India. BJP is actually getting mileage on this anti-Pakistan sentiment inside India. How should Pakistan respond to the Indian allegations? We'll discuss about all this with our special guest in the studios. Our first guest is Major Retired Ahsen Bashir, a renowned senior defense analyst and an expert on Pakistan's defense and counter-terrorism. Sir, welcome to the show. Our second guest is Mr. Nasir Jaffari. He's a renowned senior journalist and an expert on Pakistan's foreign affairs, Pakistan's foreign policy and defense issues. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jaffari. Our third guest is Dr. Khurram Iqbal. He is a renowned defense analyst and also an expert on counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency. Welcome to the show, Dr. Khurram. Mr. Bashir, starting with Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, his visit to Pakistan, he would be accompanied by several of other royal family members, high officials, and they would be signing MOUs with Pakistan. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia relationship, how do you see it? Because we have been together through thick and thin. Looking at the changing regional alliances, how do you see this visit and Pakistan-Saudi Arabia relationship?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Taimur. This is really very interesting that in this present scenario, what the thing has developed over the last couple of days, the regional environment needs to be seen that which is getting conducive and congenial for Pakistan, and continuous Pakistan success is seen in that. Now the confidence on Pakistan is developing by these countries in which Saudi Arabia, of course, is taking one of the most important allies of Pakistan since its inception. We have got some natural alliances also other than the commercial interests which are between these two countries, and especially now with the China-Pakistan economic corridor, and that Belt and Road Initiative which has come in. The Saudi Arabia's interest in Pakistan has also developed by taking out, its oil production and multiplying it, and obviously Pakistan is also going to be the greatest beneficiary of all these. This is just one very small thing which is to be talked about. However, I would say that we need to see now presently what is the regional environment. And the regional environment in our region is that continuously that menace of terrorism, which had probably gripped this entire region and especially Pakistan. Pakistan over a period of time with great sacrifices, with great good work, and with its great diplomatic relationing and its true policies which have come in, has now started to bear fruit.
Right.
And the interest of the outside nations is developing. Not only that, but also inside Pakistan the situation is now so good as far as the terrorism is concerned that Pakistan now stands out in the eyes of
certainly.
so many.
Right. Mr. Jaffari, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia relations, how do you see it? Because Prime Minister Imran Khan has been focusing on Middle East. Recently, he was visiting UAE. Before that, he was there in Saudi Arabia. This relationship, how strong this relationship is, and what is the significance of Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, visiting Pakistan tomorrow?
Well, relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia has always been very strong, very vibrant. And Saudi Arabia perhaps is the only Islamic country which has always stood by Pakistan and which has always helped Pakistan in any hour of crisis, in any hour of trial. The friendship and the good contacts between the two countries basically indicate that the relationship between the two countries has been growing. And the visit is important in a sense that it will help two countries to coordinate with each other on certain issues that are important to Islamic world, and of course to look into ways to further boost bilateral ties. For instance, there have been a lot of discussions going on, behind the scene discussions, to finalize the agreement for setting up of an oil refinery in Gwadar. That is going to be a milestone in relations between the two countries. Especially it gains further importance in the wake of the CPEC project. This also shows Saudi Arabia's growing interest in CPEC. Certainly this project is important in a sense that Pakistan is located on the crossroads, strategically very important location that we have, and this project will certainly benefit not only Pakistan but also other Islamic countries. So Saudis are coming here to be actually briefed on this project and how they can be part of this project like other Islamic countries, because this is we are in the era where you actually get success if you work in league with other nations, especially in economic field.
Of course.
And when all these Islamic countries join hands together, and so in that case, I would say that CPEC will be a blessing in disguise.
Right. And talking about CPEC, Dr. Iqbal, about China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan are strategic allies. And when we talk about China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, many experts are of the view, since you have spent time in China as well, are of the view that through Pakistan, China would also be exploring the market in Middle East. In that sense, Pakistan and China would be working solely on Middle East. How do you see, in the wake of this whole scenario, the importance of Saudi Arabia and Saudi investment in Pakistan?
Taimur, there are two parts to your question. Number one, the significance of this visit. I would say that this visit by Mohammed bin Salman complements the goals that both the leaders set after they took power a few years ago. Mohammed bin Salman wishes to modernize Saudi economy beyond oil. Number two, he wishes to see a moderate Saudi Arabia in line with the pure teachings of Islam, the moderate interpretation of Islam. This is exactly what Prime Minister Imran Khan has set his goal for. Instead of aid, Prime Minister Imran Khan is more focused on attracting international investment. So with regards to this visit, I would say that they have promised to invest around $12 billion in Gwadar, which is the key point of China-Pakistan economic corridor. Initially, there were apprehensions that China may like to see CPAC as a bilateral project, but of late we have seen that China is welcoming investment by the third parties such as Saudi Arabia. And with Saudi Arabia, of course, we enjoy a very special relationship. Like you said, that the long-term goal of CPAC is not only to develop Gwadar as a modern port city, but to connect the entire Middle East through this modern port city. So if Saudi Arabia becomes a stakeholder in Gwadar, this will certainly complement China-Pakistan grand economic vision. The second point,
Yeah, sure.
the second point is with regards to the moderate outlook of Islam being adopted by Mohammed bin Salman when he took power. He mentioned it very clearly that he wishes to see Saudi Arabia as a moderate, progressive Islamic power. That is exactly what Pakistan has been doing after waging a successful war against violent and non-violent extremism. So there's much that both the leaders and both the countries can learn from each other. On a third very important point, that is Prince Mohammed bin Salman's anti-corruption drive. We have seen how he has recovered billions of dollars from the corrupt officials in Saudi Arabia. And of course, anti-corruption is a major agenda of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf leadership. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of exchange of ideas between the two leaders with regards to fighting corruption in Pakistan.
And there are a lot of things that are common between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and perhaps Prime Minister Imran Khan, as you said, and Mohammed bin Salman. Mr. Bashir, talking about the concept of investment, Saudi investment in Pakistan, China-Pakistan economic corridor. In the past, we saw that Pakistan has been fighting extremism and terrorism successfully. Pakistan launched massive military operations all over Pakistan, and now we see that Pakistan is much more stable, absolutely stable and peaceful. Investment will be coming in, but at the same time, as we can see, the environment in the region is also getting a little disturbed because there are spoilers who don't want this to happen, who don't want our friends to come in Pakistan and invest over here, who don't want Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and other countries to collaborate and eradicate the spoilers and their designs in the region. What do you think about them, those spoilers?
Well, the spoilers will always look for their own interest, and their interest is in the coming elections, and they have to cash Pakistan's segment or this very particular thing which they always use, anti-Pakistan sentiment, and there they get it. So India has done the same thing again, and this was probably the right time for as far as they were concerned, because as you said, the prince is visiting Pakistan. So after Pakistan's visit, he's going to go to India. So India would like to present a very pathetic situation there and would like to become a victim of kind of atrocities and all that, and they would like to press what Pakistan is going to ask him, that they need to play a positive role in the freedom of Kashmir, and which is going on from last 70 years. So here they have made a case for them to be presented that look, we are to be we are victim of this terrorism. However, they, in the same way as you mentioned, the individual who did that couple of years back, just 3 years back, the situation was that the same individual was caught by their counter-insurgency troops, and then he was beaten, he was humiliated to an extent that he was asked to
rub his nose
on the ground. So this kind of venom which is there in the people, that gives a signal by itself. And the world, I think, is not that stupid to not to understand as to what the game India is trying to play at this moment, is trying to, put pressure on the borders by giving false alarms of activation of the troops, and then trying to say that we will like to give an answer back and all these kind of things. So he's trying to really spoil it, because he's seeing that Pakistan is on the onto the takeoff of everything, and India is being left behind. So they are making a case for that, but I am sure that Saudi Arabia, China and America also to some extent. America needs to also see that whether they need to really side with everything without evidence, without anything, and just to see what India is saying that they should not be saying. So they need to be careful on that account as well.
This is a very interesting point that you just raised up. United States and other big countries, powerful countries in the world, how should they and how would they respond to what is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir? Mr. Jaffari, talking about Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, as Dr. Khurram Iqbal said, Mohammed bin Salman, he is opening up. He is an unconventional kind of prince. His massive anti-corruption drive in Saudi Arabia, that also made many people unhappy back in Saudi Arabia. Also, some experts are of the view that perhaps Saudi Arabia perhaps, is drifting away a little gradually, step by step from the American bloc, from the Western bloc, coming closer to perhaps China, Russia. We saw Mohammed bin Salman's pictures with Putin. He was very warm. They were laughing and they were discussing few things. Do you see all these things? Can you connect all these things? Do you see it that way?
Well, I think it will be wrong to assume that by opening up economy and by launching this corruption drive and everything and taking these reformist actions, the Crown Prince or Saudi Arabia might be drifting away from US. No, I think it will be wrong to presume. I have been saying this all along that in today's era, this is the time where your economic interests converge and you become friends. If you have similar economic interests, you become friends. Right. If you don't have same economic interests, it will be difficult to form any friendship or to be friends with. So economic interests are supreme in this era. Number one. Number two, the situation is fast changing. Alliances are changing. They are changing shape. Rapidly. For instance, if you can see, Pakistan is a little more inclined toward Russia. Their people are coming to Pakistan. We have been holding joint military exercises with Russia. Their economic teams are coming to Pakistan, which is actually quite similar from the past. And which shows that both Pakistan and Russia have decided to basically have some sort of understanding in forging greater ties in economic field. So this is the case with Saudi Arabia also. Saudi Arabia certainly is not an exception. They are also basically kind of changing alliances. They are trying to give a new look to their alliances with certain countries. For instance, Saudi Crown Prince was also scheduled to go to New Delhi from Islamabad. Does it mean that it will have any impact on our relations? No, certainly not.
And also, Pakistan has been improving relations with Iran for that matter. So
yes,
that wouldn't
Pakistan is also improving relations with Iran. So basically, the purpose is to have more and more in-depth economic ties. This is not an era where you can basically talk to a country or try to dominate others with military power. No, there is no such thing as such these days. So economic interests are supreme, and that is the reason that Prince Mohammed bin Salman is coming to Pakistan. He will also be going to India, because Saudi Arabia will certainly see how can they have better ties with India also to get more economic dividends, to improve their economy, or how they can be helpful in other areas also. So these are kind of things.
Dr. Iqbal, talking about Mohammed bin Salman's visit, the Crown Prince, and what has happened in Pulwama, and also in Iran for that matter. Some people think in Pakistan and abroad that this whole thing is very interesting, what went on in Pulwama. Was it to overshadow his visit to Pakistan? Because as we were discussing earlier about the spoilers, we don't want to see this. Mohammed bin Salman visiting Pakistan, Saudi Arabia investing in Pakistan, both countries getting stronger. Also keeping in mind that former Chief of Army Staff Rahil Sharif is the head of the coalition forces and Islamic coalition forces in Riyadh. Pakistan is strong. Pakistan is getting strong. Saudi Arabia and Pakistan both are working together. So these attacks in different places, these insurgents, these terrorists, how do you see them?
Taimur, in international relations, timings and places of different occurrences are very important. And this is what has led to the conclusion that especially the attack in Pulwama has been orchestrated to overshadow the event and the successes that Pakistan is likely to yield from Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's visit to Pakistan. There is another explanation, as you have mentioned in your intro, that India is inching close to the elections. Prime Minister Modi has nothing to sell to his constituency. He made a lot of promises which he could not fulfill during his last 4 to 5 years of regime. For instance, he promised economic prosperity, at the end of unemployment, but the fact of matter is that today in India, unemployment is at the highest level during last 45 years. That is what exactly the Indian research centers are saying. So when he has failed to fulfill his promises that he made during the last election, he is likely to basically capitalize on other opportunities, and anti-Pakistan card sells really well in Pakistan. There's another side to what has happened in Pulwama, and I think that is more practical reasons to believe that the last 2 years of India's atrocities in Kashmir has created a new generation of radicals. These radicals, you call them freedom fighters, militants, they have developed their own momentum. They will compromise on nothing but the liberation of Kashmir. This generation of militants in Kashmir is controlled by none but the Kashmiris themselves. And India have to come up with this reality, they have to accept this reality, that this new generation of militants presents a new threat to this entire, basically, you call it a threat or an opportunity for those who are fighting for the freedom and liberation of Kashmir. So for India to deal with this new generation of Kashmir will not be that easy, that by labeling them pro-Pakistan sentiment, by labeling them terrorists, this is not going to solve the issue. Like Major Bashir has rightly mentioned, that the cousin of this suicide bomber, he also surrendered to the Indian security forces, expecting a nice treatment that Indian security forces has promised, but when he surrendered, Indian security forces arrested him, and for last 2 years nobody knows where did he go. So this guy who has blew himself up in Pulwama, he saw everything with his naked eyes. He was a part of non-violent protests which have been going on in Kashmir for last 2 years, but those non-violent protests did not pay off. India refused to back off from its cruel path. International community was silent, and when non-violent paths fail to deliver, people in occupied territories are forced to take up arms and matters into their own hands.
Right. Mr. Bashir, this is very comprehensive what Dr. Iqbal just said. Can you express an indigenous movement like the Kashmir cause movement that is going on in Indian occupied Kashmir through pellet guns, by using force, by doing all this, and when there's this kind of backlash, then they come up with another kind of propaganda that which is at the next level. How do you see this whole situation that is going on in India at the moment?
I think 70 years is good enough a time to understand where this movement is and what sort of a movement it is. It can't be a sponsored movement. For 70 years you can't sustain. Nobody can sponsor that. It is not. It is proven fact that it is indigenous. So once it is indigenous, means the people of Kashmir, the Kashmiris themselves want that kind of action, and all actions which they are not taking, and this kind of action which they have taken against the military which is there from last so many years, because from last couple of years, from last at least I think from last 5 to 7 years, we have seen that the Indian army has taken a twist. They have taken a turn. They increased their atrocities over these innocent Kashmiris. And pellet gun was one very small event, which was because they never wanted to kill the people. They wanted to incapacitate the individuals, so that they wanted to punish them. So that kind of psychologically, they want to give that psychological trauma to the people living out there. So what will happen? One is that they are trying to satisfy themselves. The other is this trauma of pellet gun and incapacitation is also going to have some reaction by the individuals as well. So that reaction of the individuals has now matured, that now they are not ready to accept anything. They don't want their women to be raped. They don't want their children to be killed. They don't want the outside people to be, being put
Occupying
there,
their
the
land.
cantonments being made where only the Hindus are allowed to settle down. There's no Kashmiri, there is no Musliman to be Muslims to be allowed to settle there in their cantonment which they are establishing. So they're trying to change the configuration of the democratically they want to change. Right. So all these things are very much in front of the Kashmiri people. So this indigenous movement is not going to end up now. This is further going to take its momentum. And the first thing has happened that now here the people want to kill themselves, and they want to, along with the killing themselves, they also want. But then the Indians are very crooked. I would say, just see that how they have twisted this thing, and they want to put everything into the bag of Pakistan that Pakistan is trying to sponsor, and they want to encash what is coming up in their very shortly in the elections, which they are likely to lose, but they don't want to do that.
The media in India at the moment, most of it, they act like a media wing of BJP at the moment, or like Shiv Sena, media wing of Shiv Sena and RSS, and that is how they're acting. But generally, Mr. Jaffari, what we have seen is that even Indians, liberal Indians, educated Indians, they condemn the Indian atrocities, the ruthlessness that the Indian army is practicing, inflicting on the innocent Kashmiris in Indian occupied Kashmir. And then there's this propaganda that the terrorist organization has taken the responsibility and claimed this attack, and the propaganda that they want to put it on Pakistan. Pakistan went extra mile out of the way to open the Kartarpur corridor with India, so that the Sikhs can visit their most sacred place in Pakistan and both countries can move forward. But this propaganda, this blame game, this venom spewing from the Indian media and the BJP government, how do you see that?
I simply call it Pakistan phobia, and this is not something new. But now they need it more, because if you might have seen Prime Minister Modi speaking somewhere in India and spitting venom against Pakistan, and making very provocative remarks. This is basically something that BJP needs, as we have just discussed this point also, that BJP has nothing on its credentials. They have miserably been failed to deliver during their tenure. They were not able to fulfill their commitments. So the only thing left for them is to sell anti-Pakistan sentiment, which is being widely accepted by people, because we should not actually forget that a majority of illiterate people in India and those who are not actually very aware of the things take all these things very seriously and start joining BJP in actually speaking against Pakistan. So this is one thing, and another important thing is that if they don't, sell this anti-Pakistan, if they don't play this anti-Pakistan card, BJP won't be able actually to woo their voters. This is the main problem. And if you can see timing of this Pulwama incident, it looks quite intriguing that it takes place just ahead of the visit of Saudi Crown Prince. And now I can tell you what will happen, that when Saudi Crown Prince lands in New Delhi, talks to Mr. Modi, and he will again start harp on anti-Pakistan mantra, and look, this Pakistan did to us, and this is what they have been doing, and this or that. So they have everything ready, and this is what they will do during Crown Prince Salman's visit to New Delhi. So if you can see at their approach, it has all along been very negative. Right from 1980s, when Rajiv Gandhi was alive and when he came to Pakistan, and we signed agreement of no first attack. Actually, then there was an agreement on Siachen. India backtracked on that also. Then we actually made several proposals to reduce risk of any nuclear clash, but India never responded positively. Number 3, if you can see, India has been making lot of hue and cry about Mumbai attacks, that Pakistan is not actually awarding any punishment to the culprits, and so on and so forth. So somebody should ask them, what have you done to the culprits of Samjhota Express? If you remember, how many Pakistanis, innocent Pakistanis, were killed in that attack. So what they have done, when they talk about basically intervention by Pakistan, what they are doing, they are using Balochistan, our province, as a hub to destabilize Pakistan. And this is an open secret, especially after arrest of this Yadav. So there should be something, some actually maturity on part of Indian leadership, that this kind of attitude will actually not serve any purpose.
Do you expect this maturity that you just mentioned from the BJP government, from people like Amit Shah, people like Adityanath Yogi, and their Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
I will tell you, you see, the problem is that this anti-Pakistan sentiment got so deep-rooted during last 5 years, and thanks to Mr. Modi and his extremist policies.
Just mention Prime Minister Modi, Dr. Iqbal. Prime Minister Modi visited Pakistan once. He met former Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and when he went back, we saw the Pathankot attack. Then there was the Uri attack, and now there's Pulwama attack. This has become more sort of like a joke, perhaps, that whenever a dignitary is visiting Pakistan, when they go back, something happens in India, something happens in, for that matter, Indian-occupied Kashmir. Sheer propaganda. How do you see it?
That's one side of this incident, but since it was a suicide attack, and my research, I did my PhD on motivations of suicide bombers, looking at the case studies of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kashmir. I found out that vengeance plays a very important role in motivating individuals to explode themselves, to use their body as bullets. I think this is the case. This is purely an indigenous Kashmir movement which has emerged from the ashes of barbarity and this brutality that Indian forces have demonstrated during last 3 years since the martyrdom of Burhan Wani. So now how India deals with that? First option is political point scoring, that instead of dealing with the issue head on, you deflect the attention from the real issues, you tag it as a Pakistan ploy to damage India. Taimur, like I said, timing matters a lot. Whenever a crime takes place, we have to see who is the biggest beneficiary of this crime. Pakistan stands to gain nothing from attack in Pulwama. At the moment, BJP and Modi stands to be the biggest beneficiaries of Pulwama attack. So they would like to manipulate this event for their point scoring, to gain most of it for the next coming elections, but that's not going to solve the issue. When there's a new generation of militants, you have to take Pakistan on board. You have to talk to Pakistan. You have to talk to Kashmiri leadership to pacify this new generation of militants. If India fails to acknowledge this new reality on ground, I'm afraid that the peace of entire South Asian region would be at stake, and there'll be no one to blame for it but India.
Interestingly, recently, State Department, they said that we call on all countries to uphold their responsibility pursuant to UN Security Council resolutions to deny safe havens and support for terrorists. They talk about UN resolution, Security Council's resolution, but what US stands for, or what US has been preaching and telling to the whole world, the human rights and basic human rights and liberal values, what about that? But every day that is being violated in Indian-occupied Kashmir. They don't talk about that at that point, when innocent people are being killed. pellet guns are used against children, ambulances are being attacked, hospitals are being attacked, Muslims and Sikhs and Christians are being attacked and killed in India. They don't talk about that. Is it just a matter of geoeconomics? It's just a matter of economy and trade and money, and that is it? There's nothing called liberal values, there's nothing called human rights in the world?
Taimur, it's a very pertinent point, I would say. Gone are the days when the American policymakers would treat terrorism on merit. Gone are the days when every terrorist will be termed a terrorist by the American and Western allies. Now, terrorism would be treated by the American policymakers, by the American media, and by American scholars through the lens of geostrategic interests. Now, the America's greater geostrategic interest is to contain China. That's where India becomes very important for United States of America. So no matter whatever Pakistan says about Pulwama attack, Americans are likely to listen more to the Indians because Indians are now their allies to contain China. I'm afraid that this terrorism card will be used by the Western forces the way they have used that during the Cold War era. Interestingly, a few months ago, there was an attack in Iran on the Revolutionary Guards. The statement from the American officials was quite interesting. Instead of condemning the attack, they termed the attack as a reaction or to Iran's authoritarian policies. So look at the difference of wording, the selection of phraseology, how Americans justify attacks against Iran. But they condemn, of course, they have condemned Pulwama attack, but they try to bring in Pakistan into this entire discourse indirectly. So Americans and their allies are likely to play the terrorism card in the decades to come, and Pakistan and its allies need to have a plan B how to deal with this propaganda campaign.
Mr. Bashir, the White House said that the attack strengthened its resolve to bolster counterterrorism cooperation and coordination with India. Maybe I missed it, but did you ever saw any statement condemning the violation of human rights in Indian occupied Kashmir, or for that matter in Palestine, from the American friends?
I think Americans have never done that, but however, I would say that after a very long time and since Pakistan was pleading the case of the innocent Kashmiris, the UN did spoke for the first time, and then they said that there will be a team which is required to visit and see, and India never allowed those, that team to visit and to see by itself with its own eyes and assess the situation and come back to the UN and give its report. It's still pending and nobody has allowed. So India has not allowed on that. The Americans, on the other hand, will never like to say anything which goes against their interest. And obviously, as Dr. Saab is also saying that, American interest at the moment in this region is to get out from Afghanistan, clear chit from Afghanistan, and the other is to give greater role to India in Afghanistan and also to have a checkmate against the growing strength, economic strength of China. So they have got very clear mandate and they have got very clear ambitions and aims in this region. So if they are being met through these incidents, obviously just see where the dices are going. So that means that America is not likely to say anything in support of the Kashmiri freedom fighters. They are not likely to do that, but however, they are likely to accuse the others like Pakistan or some the factions in Pakistan, right. And they are doing. But then at the same time, they also would like to, at this time, the timing, as everyone's saying, where timing is very important. America wants to get out from Afghanistan, and Pakistan is the only country which is facilitating America and Afghan Taliban to come on one table and have a long-lasting solution to that problem.
This certainly is very interesting, and we have been doing a lot of shows together. Absolutely. On Afghanistan, and we will be discussing about this. But what you just said is absolutely right. There are three things, Mr. Jaffari, at the moment. While we see that the neighborhood is not stable, Indian occupied Kashmir and the Indian brutalities over there, Iran has its own issues, Afghanistan we see is in turmoil, peace talks are going on, Pakistan and China are working on China-Pakistan economic corridor. We want to make more alliances, more friends, come in Pakistan, invest in Pakistan, and let's work for stability and peace. But what do you do with hostile neighbors like India? What do you do with hostile neighbors propaganda and terrorism? How do you deal with these issues?
You know, as far as the issue of terrorism is concerned, Pakistan has been actually actively involved in taking certain steps to deal with the problem, and by the grace of Allah, the problem has been contained to a certain extent. Situation is pretty much better, but to have a cordial neighbor, it requires lot of work. It also requires the international community to convince New Delhi to think of forging better ties with Pakistan, because we cannot actually properly bear fruits of all this economic activity that is generating or that is going to be generated in near future until this hostility is over. So it's better that the sanity should prevail in India. They should think of all these things, that hostility won't serve any purpose, basically.
Right.
Then why not join hands and work together for prosperity of the millions of people of this region by trying to sort out issues. I mean, this is something doable,
Doable,
provided India thinks of it with sincerity and with prudence and wisdom.
We hope, and let's hope for the best. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. Today we discussed about Mohammed bin Salman, his visit to Pakistan. Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, would be visiting Pakistan tomorrow. Both countries would sign several MOUs. Saudi Arabia would invest in Pakistan, and that would be primarily to strengthen the relationship, to strengthen the bond that has been there for the last several decades. Having said that, what happened in Pulwama, we see, as our guest was saying, is absolutely an indigenous movement that is going on in Kashmir. While the big powers in the world talk about United Nations Security Council resolution, they talk about terrorists, they talk about counter-terrorism, we also have to talk about the basic human rights that are being violated every day in Kashmir, the children that are being killed every day in Kashmir, the ambulances and hospitals attacked every day in Kashmir, and we also have to hear the voices, listen to the voices of the people, their cries in Kashmir, who have been asking for their right to self-determination for the last 70 years. If liberalism doesn't exist, then what are we all discussing? And what are we all striving for? I think human rights is the basic thing that we all should strive for. Thank you for watching today's show. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz.